Fiscal on fires. In January 2019, CAL FIRE joined the rest of the state of California in using the financial system called Fiscal for processing purchases and many other types of transactions. We have all found the system to be challenging at times, and now our first fire season after transitioning to Fiscal is here. Although there are many unknowns as to just how easy or difficult it will be to continue using Fiscal for incident purchasing, this video is intended to share what I know or guess as of May 2019, and to give guidance particularly for non-finance fire personnel who may have to make incident purchases in the course of responding to wildland fires. The examples I give will be for restaurant and lodging purchases. It will also cover how to enter those purchases into Fiscal in the later part of the video. Because this is our first fire season trying to make Fiscal work for incidents, it's hard to say how it will go, and I confess that I haven't received finely detailed instructions or much incident-specific instructions at all, but I will share what I can. An important fact to keep in mind is that Fiscal is merely the method by which we record our purchases. All of the procurement rules and guidelines we used last fire season still exist for this fire season, until BSO or another authority says otherwise. For example, rules such as you cannot feed or sleep fewer than 3 persons, you must have a signed roster, and tip and gratuity guidelines still exist. You will still use CAL FIRE 93 forms when you stay at a hotel, although standard 65 forms are no longer required for goods purchases. You'll still need a standard 204 from any vendor not in Fiscal, and it's a good idea to get a CAL FIRE 20 whenever you buy a service such as a stay at a hotel. This video does not cover all procurement guidelines. It is intended to give information about using Fiscal on fires. If you have a question about the rules and guidelines of when and how to make incident purchases, please ask your unit finance or up your chain of command. Getting started, I'll answer a few big questions. Do we have to record our incident purchases in Fiscal? Yes, you do. Some fires will have an incident finance team with purchasing specialists, just like always, and they will handle many incident purchases and enter them into Fiscal. However, if you are a member of a crew or strike team or other fire personnel, and you lodge your crew at a hotel or feed them at a restaurant, and you put that purchase on your CAL card, you are responsible for that transaction. Incident finance will not be taking care of your purchases or putting them into Fiscal for you. Depending on your unit's policies and current workload, you might or might not receive assistance from your unit finance. So how are we expected to put our PO into Fiscal and get it approved before eating or sleeping? You aren't. Of course, the best practice is to always get a purchase order approved before making a purchase, and this is policy for ordinary day-to-day transactions. But in the case of an emergency incident, it obviously isn't practical and will often be impossible. So how soon after the purchase do we have to get it into Fiscal? If you're assigned to an incident, you may be away from your unit, your usual station, and home for days or weeks or even months on end. Locating a laptop and scanner you can use might be difficult. Certainly, your health and safety come first, so shorting yourself on sleep in order to enter a purchase into Fiscal is not suggested. However, for several reasons, including tracking the cost of fires and reconciling your bank statement in a timely fashion, please have purchases entered in Fiscal within a week of making them. What if I don't have a scanner to scan the documents or a computer to work in Fiscal? Basecamp may have a scanner or computer you can use. Legible photos taken with a cell phone are acceptable. You can also install CamScanner or a similar app onto your phone. Fiscal does work through the web browser on your phone, though it might be more challenging than usual to use it that way. Alternately, you might be able to borrow someone else's laptop if you don't have access to one of your own. Also recall that Fiscal users can make purchase orders that have someone else as the buyer. You might want to wish to make an arrangement with a coworker who is not assigned to a fire. Then you send him or her your documents and he or she creates your purchase order for you, specifying you as the buyer. In that case, all you'll have to do is send your digital documents, your invoices, receipts, CAL FIRE 93s, etc., to that person. Keep in mind that you should not be emailing documents with personally identifiable information such as social security numbers. How are we supposed to know if a vendor is in Fiscal before buying there? You can look them up on your phone using Fiscal if you have cell service. You might also be able to phone someone else with access to a computer and ask that person to look up the vendor for you. If in doubt, just have the vendor fill out a standard 204 before you buy from them. If they can't or won't, I suggest you dine or lodge somewhere else. How do I fill out a purchase order in Fiscal for an incident purchase? It's very similar to an ordinary purchase order, with a few critical differences. I'll show you a couple examples. These examples I'll use are from last year, so I won't be clicking save or sending it for approval, but everything else will be the same, unless I mention otherwise. First, a restaurant example. If you can, you'll want to check in Fiscal that the restaurant you're going to dine at is an approved supplier and open for ordering, and that the physical address location where you're dining is in Fiscal. Be especially careful of this if it's a chain like Denny's or Black Bear Diner. I made a different video showing how to check suppliers, so I refer you to that if you don't know how. In my example, I'll be using a purchase I made at Empire Grill for CZU's Rincon Fire in November of 2018. Here are my purchase documents. Now these are old from before Fiscal, but many of the aspects of them will be similar. I have the itemized receipt, which shows the restaurant's name and address at the top. There was a gratuity selected by the supplier, and it appears here above my total. The second page of the receipt shows that I paid. Next comes my roster. I have several pages of it. And lastly, my CAL FIRE 15. Because the supplier did impose a gratuity. Other documentation I don't have, but which you might want, is a copy or photo of the menu. I didn't get one because Empire Grill is a block away from CZU's headquarters, so I can easily go and get a menu at any time. But say, if you're from BEU and you get sent to BTU and eat at some little mom and pop restaurant out in the middle of nowhere, you should get the menu before you go, just in case, 6 months later, someone in Sacramento says, "Your receipt doesn't make sense. Show us the menu." Now, since there haven't been many incident purchases put through Fiscal yet, at least at my unit, I haven't heard concrete information on what to write on your documents. I'll give you my best guess based on my experience with Fiscal, but I can't guarantee what DAO and SCO are going to like or dislike, as we all learn how incident purchases will get processed. If you have to cut your receipt, I'd still say write receipt cut to fit and number the pieces. Glue or tape it down and scan it, or take a clear photo if that's your only option. I don't think you'll need to put the supplier ID on the papers, but do write the purchase order ID. As for the data about fire, fire name, incident number, meals, cost, breakdown, and indicating that it's a going fire, I would definitely include those. General provisions you'll put on the purchase order in Fiscal, and the all items received, I'm not sure about, so you can just include it to be safe if you want. The coding, I wouldn't imagine we have to include on our paper documents since Fiscal has it, so I'm not going to write it on my purchase documents, and I hope I'm correct that I can leave it off. Fill out the top of the roster, just like before, with the date, incident name, number, CalCard holder's name. And everyone has to write their name and other data and sign in blue ink. My roster is a photocopy, so the signatures are not in blue ink, but they need to be in blue ink. This is the same as we've been doing for previous fire seasons. The purchaser fills out the bottom of the CAL FIRE 15, just as before. Make sure you're using the newest version of the CAL FIRE 15. Throw out your old ones and go get new ones from the CAL FIRE Internet. Once I have these documents ready, I can enter my purchase order in Fiscal. Here we are in Fiscal. I've logged in already. I'll make this purchase order from scratch, but you also have the option of copying old POs if you have a suitable one. I'll go to my favorites where I already have Add Update POs saved. Just as you would for making any new purchase order, go to the Add a New Value tab and click Add. Don't change these two items. You'll put in your supplier. Make sure you have the correct purchaser. If you are making this purchase order for somebody else, you'll need to change to their buyer name and number using this magnifying glass. But if it's your own purchase, then your name will appear there automatically. Acquisition type will be non-IT goods for food. Acquisition method, you click on the magnifying glass, you'll see your options. I think we'll still use fair and reasonable, although there are these two options that say emergency. The first one says non-natural disaster, but fires are natural disasters, so it can't be that one. I haven't heard what to do with this type of acquisition method. For now, I'm going to use fair and reasonable competitive until I hear otherwise. Now you get to DGS billing code, and here's a difference between this and a regular purchase order. Whose fire is this? In the case of my example, it is CZU's fire. So I would use CZU's billing code. It also happens to be my home unit, 013117. But what if it's not CZU's fire? Say it is SCU's fire. I put in SCU's billing code. Just so happens it's the same as mine, except this ends with a 6. If you click on the magnifying glass and look up billing codes, you'll see they don't tell you who they belong to, which is not very useful. To find the billing codes of other units, go to the CAL FIRE web, the CAL FIRE Intranet, library, phone lists, accounting, finance. A PDF will open that shows you all of the units. It shows a column with their billing code, this kind of peachy colored column. It'll also show you their reporting structure here in this second green column. And you can look them up. Their 3-letter codes are here under unit name. So if it's somebody else's fire that you have been dispatched to, you will use that unit's billing code. You'll also use that unit's reporting structure when we get to the coding. It doesn't matter what unit you are from or what unit the purchaser, if it's not you, is from. You enter the billing code of the unit that owns the fire. But this fire was CZU's fire, so I'll change that back to CZU's billing code. Moving on, under Header Details, you will change the billing location to the headquarters of the unit hosting the fire. CZU's ends in 162. If you don't know what it is, click on the magnifying glass, change description, I'll get rid of that, change description to contains, put in the 3-letter code of the unit. For example, if this were LNU, I'll put LNU in there, click look up, and it will give me every result with LNU in the description. And I find their headquarters. Here it is, LNU HQ, and I click on that to pick that billing address. But I'll leave it 162 because that's for CZU's headquarters. Don't touch anything else, just click OK. If you're going to use the PO defaults box, you'll choose Override as usual. For Ship To, I suggest putting, again, the headquarters of the unit who owns the fire. In the chart fields section, if you only have one line of coding, you're just coding this off to one fire, you can put it here and be done. From the speed chart, you can click this magnifying glass and pick the PCA, or service location as it is now called, and the fiscal year you're charging to. Keep in mind that the year indicated in the incident number of the fire is the calendar year, but the year you'll charge it to will be the fiscal year. For example, a fire happens in May 2019, which is now sort of usual. I'll make up an incident number. Let's say it gets numbered like this, F19 CACZU 012345. The 19 refers to the calendar year the fire occurred in, 2019. However, May 2019 is still fiscal year 2018, so this fire is charged to the 2018 budget, despite having a 19 in the incident number. Another fire happens in July 2019 and gets numbered like this invented number, F19 CACZU 056789. This fire was also in calendar year 2019, but now in July we're in fiscal year 2019, so it's charged to the 2019 budget. Currently in speed charts there is only one 0900, and it comes without a fiscal year. After you select it, you'll have to add the year to your coding. 0907 and 0908, however, have year options in the speed charts. Just be sure to pick the correct fiscal year for your purchase. In my example, the fire was in November 2018, and that was fiscal year 18. So I pick 0900. Fiscal will fill in a few codes for me, but then I have to fill in here under ENY 2018. You'll need to enter the account code as well, which is 532023 for restaurant feeding. Click an alt account, it will fill in for you. Scroll to the right, enter the reporting structure of the unit hosting the fire, not your home unit, unless it's your home unit's fire. In my case, CZU 35401701. If this were SCU's fire, it would be 1601. Depending on whose fire it is, the reporting structure will change. Now for incidents, you will have to look at these 3 items: PC business unit, project, and activity. PC business unit is always 3540, CAL FIRE's number. Activity is 01, but if you put it in first, it's going to give you an error, I think. So we'll look up project, which is the incident number. It's called project. Click the magnifying glass to look it up. It may take a while for Fiscal to generate this list. Once the list appears, you can look up your incident. The project column is the incident number, so I can enter it here. The fire was the Rincon fire. I enter the incident number and click look up. Fiscal should find it for me. There it is. It isn't named the Rincon fire here in Fiscal, but the number matches, so I click it. Now I should be able to put in 01 for activity. My latest information is that for all incidents, you will use 01 for activity, and then double check that everything is filled in that I need to fill in, and click OK. As usual, Fiscal will tell me I've changed the ship to field, which is what I wanted to do, so I click OK. For the Add Comments and Attachments link, you'll upload all your documents. Your receipt, your CAL FIRE 15, your rosters, and if there's anything else, you'll upload it here. Include your justification. You can get it by using standard comments. Enter CAF, which is the code for CAL FIRE. And in comment ID, you can enter 0011 and click OK. It will produce a going fire fee, blah, 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 blah. Just add your incident name and incident number here, and then check approval justification. In an additional comment, you can use standard comments again to go and fetch a standard comment for tip or gratuity. I used the wrong code. Down here at the bottom, tips, it is code 0026. You'll need to check all three of these boxes. You should also copy over the justification from your first box once you've filled in your incident name and incident number. Copy and paste it into this box as well. You can also include the general provisions in your comments. Go to another window, look it up. This time it is STW, and I believe it is NIT. Click OK. Fiscal thinks. And general provisions appear. Don't forget to check all three boxes except for approval justification. I'm also going to include the per meal cost breakdown because we have been required to do it in the past. I take it here from my receipt, 79 meals at $27.34 each. So I type that here into Fiscal. You get this number just by taking the total cost of the purchase and dividing it by however many meals there were. And click all three boxes just as before. Once you've attached everything you need to attach, your receipt, your roster, CAL FIRE 15, all of your documents, make sure you've attached them all, you put in all your comments, all your boxes are checked, and then click OK. If your purchase uses a P card or CAL card, which it probably does, you will link it now with this Use Procurement Card link. The only card or cards that will appear here are those belonging to the person listed as the buyer. So you use a drop-down, select the card, click OK once, click OK twice, and it is linked to this purchase. Car reportable, you will say yes. It will ask you a question, then tell it no. This new line appearing here is something new I haven't seen before until the recent months. I just ignore it. Now you will enter your line items. The question arises, do we have to itemize every item on the receipt? I have not yet received word on this at the time of making this video. You probably know that subsistence purchases must be broken down by UNSPSC category. My logic suggests that restaurant food fits under the UNSPSC category of prepared and preserved food, so I will use that. But I will separate out the beverages ordered and put them under the beverages category. You can follow this logic if you like until we receive word to do something else. But remember, I am not the authority. So separating this out requires a calculator. I calculate my food before taxes, my beverages before taxes, and I'll also make a line for the gratuity. But I do have to account for taxes. Taxes are calculated based on the location of the restaurant, which might not be in the unit who owns the fire if you ate on your way to or from, or if the fire spread and you were fighting it in a neighboring county or even a neighboring state. It could get challenging to calculate your taxes properly if you don't really know where this restaurant was located. If you know the city and county of the restaurant, sure, put it in the tax information box. If, despite your best efforts, you can't get it to calculate correctly, my solution is to make a separate line for the tax. I have received contradictory information about how to handle taxes that can't be shoved into the tax box. You combine it with the purchase price, or you make a separate line. But I did hear that SCO won't pay unless they can see the tax. So I have been putting it on a separate line, not combined with my items. And I hope this direction is not incorrect. Whenever possible, do use the tax information box in Fiscal. So in Fiscal, I start with a description. I'm using restaurant food until I hear otherwise. Purchase order quantity will be 1. For unit of measurement, I will use LO for lot. For category, I will use 5019, 4 zeros, the code for prepared and preserved foods. I used a calculator, added everything up, and I got $1,548.53. To get additional lines, just like before, pick how many rows you need, click OK, and Fiscal will generate them for you. I've entered my other 3 lines now. I called the second one restaurant beverages, then gratuity, then my sales tax. Quantity was 1 for each of them. I used lot for the beverages, each for the gratuity and sales tax. I used the same category code for the gratuity and the sales tax as for the restaurant food and put in the beverages one for the beverages item. Then my amounts. I will want to go in and take a look at the tax information box. Fiscal will try to tax all of your lines. But if you were unable to calculate the proper tax amount, then you will need to change each of these to item is exempt and click calculate SUT to make the taxes 0. Otherwise, you'll double tax because you separated your sales tax out into a different line, as I did in this example. But if you are able to get the tax correct, which is the ideal situation, then you would not leave it as exempt, you would leave it as sales tax applicable if it calculates correctly for your situation. Go into the distributions icon just to check that all of the coding you put in the PO defaults box came over correctly. So I take a look, make sure it is all just as it was before. Incident number is still in there. It's going to the right reporting structure that matches the unit and the incident. The account code's in there. Everything looks good. I click OK. I'll do that for each of my lines to make sure that the tax is being applied correctly, everything's adding up. At the end, click Calculate and make sure that this total amount matches your purchase amount. When all of that is together, you can click Save, and then the green checkbox here at the top to submit for approval. One thing to note is that if this expense was for someone else's fire, not your home unit, then you're using someone else's billing code and reporting structure. This means that this purchase order will not go to your own BCs or unit finance for approval. It will go to the BCs and finance from the unit hosting the fire. If you are a purchase order approver, be aware that when your unit has a big fire, you'll start getting purchase orders to approve from buyers and other units. Please don't automatically deny purchase orders just because Joe Smith or whoever is not a buyer in your unit. Captain Smith might be charging an expense to your fire because he was there fighting it with his crew. The dispatch and reconciliation phases in Fiscal will be the same as any non-incident purchase. Remember that you do not do the receiving process with P-card purchases, you do the reconciliation process. Next, a hotel example. If you can, you'll want to check in Fiscal that the hotel you're going to lodge at is an approved supplier and open for ordering, and that the physical address location where you're lodging is in Fiscal. Be especially careful of this if it's a chain like Best Western or Holiday Inn and so on. I made a different video showing how to check suppliers, so I refer you to that if you need to know how. In my example, I'll be using a purchase I made at Brookdale Resort for CZU's Bear Fire in November of 2018. Here are my purchase documents. I have a CAL FIRE 93 first. It's the old version because this is from pre-Fiscal. Make sure you use the new version that has space instead of Calators coding down here. It has space for Fiscal coding. Next is the roster, and then the hotel invoice, which also shows my balance due is 0. I paid. You might also need a CAL FIRE 20 if you don't have one already. You'll need to attach it to your purchase order, so have the hotel fill one out when you check in. Make sure that before you leave the hotel that your folio receipt matches the roster as far as how many single and double rooms you paid for and used, and that the room numbers on your roster and the folio match. If they don't match, there will be trouble for you in the future. Additionally, make sure every person you're paying for signs the roster in blue ink and indicates whether they slept in a single or double room and their room number. Since there haven't been many incident purchases put through Fiscal yet, at least in my unit, I haven't heard concrete information on what to write on your documents. I'll give you my best guess based on my experience with Fiscal, but I can't guarantee what DAO and SCO are going to like or dislike as we all learn how incident purchases will get processed. I don't think you need to put the supplier ID on the papers, but do write the purchase order ID on every page. The coding, I wouldn't imagine we have to include since Fiscal has it, and it's going to be on the 93, so I'm not going to write it on my purchase documents, and I hope I'm correct that I can leave it off. Your CAL FIRE 93 will have a lot of other important data in addition to the coding, including line itemization of the rooms you rented. If you don't have a UI number, which will appear here at the top of your 93, you can get one from your unit finance. Fill out the top of the roster just like before. Everyone has to write their names and other data, including the room number and whether it was a double or a single. And sign in blue ink, just as we've been doing before Fiscal. My copy here is in black and white because it's a photocopy. Once you have all those documents, you're ready to do your purchase order in Fiscal. Here I've logged into Fiscal. I'll make this purchase order from scratch, but you also have the option of copying old POs. In my favorites, I've already saved the Add Update POs link. So go there, just as you would for making any purchase order, and add a new value. Don't touch either of these fields, just click Add. Start by putting in your supplier. Make sure you have the correct purchaser, whether it was you or whether you are making this purchase order for a different buyer. Make sure the person who made the purchase is the person listed here with this number and this name. Acquisition type will be non-IT services, which is what we use for lodging. Subtype is required. I will use personal services until I hear otherwise. Acquisition method. There are these two options here that say emergency. Non-natural disaster wouldn't apply because fires are natural disasters, but I'm not sure what this other one is for, so until I know otherwise, I'm going to use fair and reasonable. Here is a major difference to making an incident purchase order versus a non-incident purchase order. Whose fire is this? In the case of my example, it is CZU's fire. So I will use CZU's billing code, 013117. What if it's not CZU's fire? Say it is SCU's fire. I will put in SCU's billing code, which happens to be very similar, except it ends in a 6. Then I would also use SCU's reporting structure in the coding, if it's SCU's fire. It doesn't matter what unit you are from, or what unit the purchaser, if it's not you, is from. You enter the billing code of the unit that owns the fire. What if you don't know the billing code for the unit that owns the fire? In your web browser, go to the CAL FIRE web, CAL FIRE intranet, library, phone lists, accounting, finance, and you will see this PDF where you can locate the billing code here in this peachy orange column that goes with all of our different units. The reporting structure for the different units is also here in this second green column. You will need these numbers when you're making a purchase order that is charging to someone else's fire. In my case, I am charging to CZU's fire, so I leave the billing code for CZU. Under header details, you will change the billing location to the headquarters of the unit hosting the fire. In this case, I am charging to a CZU fire. CZU has 162 as the billing address. If you are looking for a different location, you can put contains for the description and then the 3-letter code of the unit. For example, if it were MMU, I put in MMU and click look up, and Fiscal will provide me with all of MMU's locations. Somewhere here is MMU's HQ, and I click on that and then click OK. But in my case, it's CZU's fire. I leave it 162, don't touch anything else. If you're going to use PO defaults, you'll choose override as usual. And then you will change the ship to be, again, the headquarters of the unit that is hosting the fire. I'll put 162 for CZU, or you can look it up using the magnifying glass, just as I showed you with the bill to. If you only have one line of coding, you can put it here in the PO defaults box and be done. From the speed charts, pick the PCA, or service location as it's now called, and the fiscal year you're charging to. Keep in mind that the year indicated in the incident number of the fire is the calendar year, but the year you'll charge it to will be the fiscal year. For example, if a fire happens in May 2019, which is now sort of usual, I'll make up an incident number. Let's say it gets numbered like this, F19CACZU 012345. The 19 in the name refers to the calendar year the fire occurred in, 2019. However, May 2019 is still fiscal year 2018, so this fire is charged to the 2018 budget despite having a 19 in the incident number. Then another fire happens in July 2019 and gets numbered like this invented number, F19CACZU 056789. The fire was also in calendar year 2019, so it also has a 19 in it, but now we're in fiscal year 2019 as well, because it switches over July 1st. So this second fire would be charged to the 2019 budget. Currently, in the speed charts, there is only one 0900, and it comes without a fiscal year. After you select it, you'll have to add the year to your coding. 0907 and 0908, however, have year options in the speed charts. Just be sure to pick the correct fiscal year for your purchase. In my example, the fire was November 2018, and that was fiscal year 18. So I can pick 0900 and then under NEY, enter 2018 for the fiscal year. Whoops. For the account, you will enter $5320220 for hotel lodging. Click into the alt account box and Fiscal will fill it in for you. Slide over to the right until you see the reporting structure and enter the reporting structure of the unit hosting the fire. For incidents, you must also enter these three items: PC Business Unit, Project, and Activity. PC Business Unit is always 3540 for CAL FIRE. You'll have to click the magnifying glass in order to look up your project number. Sometimes Fiscal takes a couple minutes to produce this list of project numbers. All right, so Fiscal produced this list for me. Your project number is your incident number, so you can enter it directly and search for it. This is the project incident number I want, so I enter it, click look up, and Fiscal finds it for me. Although it was named the Bear Fire, the description does not have the name of the fire attached to the incident number. In some cases it does, I'm not sure why this time it doesn't, but just find the incident number you want and click on it. Now for activity, I am told it will always be 01. If you try to enter it before the project code, you may get an error. Once my string of coding is entered here, I'll click OK. Remember, you must also put this on your CAL FIRE 93. As always, Fiscal will tell me I changed the ship to field. That's okay. Now, moving on to the Add Comments and Attachments link, you'll upload all your documents, including your 93, your receipt, your roster, and your 20. You can enter your justification by using standard comments. CAF is the code for CAL FIRE. The comments ID for hotels is 0012. You can click OK, and Fiscal will enter it for you. You just need to write the incident name and the incident number into the justification. Check Approval Justification. Then once you've entered your incident name and number, copy it, click the plus, paste it, and click all three of these other boxes so that when the purchase order PDF prints, a justification will show up. I'm also going to include the per bed cost breakdown in the comments because we needed it in the past. Here it appears on my 93. I'm going to also put it into my comments. Make sure you have all three of these boxes checked so that this comment appears on your purchase order PDF. You'll need to click Attach, choose File, and navigate to your purchase documents and attach them as well. When you've done all your attachments and comments, you can click OK. If the purchase used a P card or CAL card, which it probably did, you will link it now using the Use Procurement Card link. The only card or cards... Oh, isn't that lovely? Well, clicking on that link restored it. Let me try this again. There we go. The only card or cards that will appear here under this drop-down are those belonging to the person listed as the buyer. In this case, it's me. Click the card that the buyer used, click OK once, click OK twice, and the card is linked. Moving down the page, car reportable, tell it yes. When it asks you a question, tell it no. Now enter your line items. The question arises, how do we itemize lodging? I have not yet received word on this at the time of making this video, but on the 93, we break it down by type of room. Like this. You can see there's singles and there's doubles. So I'm going to do the same thing on the purchase order. I'll tell it there was a single room. How many? 2. Unit of measure. I'm assuming each. I can check the list. There's no option for room. I'll just use each until I hear otherwise. Here are the category codes for lodging, 9011501. You can use the same code for double, single, triple rooms and the tax if you can't get it to work in the tax information box. Then, since I've specified quantity 2, I'll put the price per room here in the price column. The rate was $90 a room for the single rooms. Okay, that's fine, but what about the taxes? My receipts show 3 different types of taxes: a tourism assessment, an occupancy tax, and a tourism levy. None of these are sales tax, and none of them appear under the miscellaneous charges list. I do not have an answer at this time as to whether we are supposed to put all the room taxes together into a miscellaneous charge or do separate line items. Again, I have heard contradictory directions, and I don't know which is better. I think I will put them as separate line items, but I don't know if that's right. Perhaps you have more information or have heard a particular direction, in which case, of course, you should follow what you've been told. Otherwise, you can follow my logic if you like it, until we receive word to do something else. But remember, I am not the authority. Once I've calculated my amounts, I enter them on a couple of additional lines. If this was all charged to a single incident and I use the PO defaults box, once I've filled out my line items, I'm finished. But I'll check the distribution tab just to make sure everything got applied correctly. Go into the schedule icon and then to the distribution chart fields icon and double check that all of the coding I wanted is still here. Everything looks good. I can click OK and go do the same with my other line items. Once that's all taken care of, I will click Save and then the green checkbox at the top of the page to submit it for approval. Well, Fiscal doesn't like that there's not. I put in a purchase order quantity. Okay. Okay. Note that if this expense was for someone else's fire, you're using someone else's billing code and reporting structure. That means that this purchase order will not go to your own BCs and unit finance for approval. It will go to BCs and finance from the unit hosting the fire. If you are a purchase order approver, be aware that when your unit has a big fire, you'll start getting purchase orders to approve from buyers and other units. Please don't automatically deny purchase orders just because Joe Smith or whoever is not a buyer in your unit. Captain Smith might be charging an expense to your fire because he was there with his strike team fighting it. The dispatch and reconciliation phases in Fiscal will be the same as any non-incident purchase. Remember that you do not do the receiving process with P-card purchases. You do the reconciliation process instead. This concludes my video on restaurant and hotel incident purchasing. I do apologize that I don't have concrete directions in some cases, and I hope this lack of direction will not cause you rejected purchase orders and extra work. I expect that further information will appear as the fire season ramps up and incident purchases begin appearing in Fiscal. Once there is a cohesive and complete set of directions, this video may be updated. Stay safe.